Okay, we are live. Thank you very much for joining us. After my little hiccup yesterday, we are actually back together.
Cool.
Thank you very much for coming in. Coach Stephen, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing very well, but I've been sitting here like this for 24 hours. Can you believe it? He's going to show up any minute.
Waiting.
Just waiting and waiting. Now, I want to apologise to people on my channel as well that might have tuned in. But anyway, here we are. These things happen. We have these technical glitches. We have brain fog or whatever. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it was my brain fog from adding all those carbs back in that have, yeah.
I've got my fatty latte here, which is gorgeous.
Oh, that was nice.
100 millilitres of boiling hot water, 2 egg yolks, a little bit of salt, and butter. Yeah, 35 grams of butter. And there's no coffee in it. And it's a great replacement. If anyone's thinking, great replacement for those that are trying to cut coffee. Because I cut coffee completely and utterly. Well, I'd say a week ago, completely and utterly, because 3 weeks ago I went to do it. But I found myself wanting one every so often. Coach Cherish did this. It is fantastic.
I'm gonna have to try that. I've got down to one a day, and I was planning to try going without for a whole day this week, but that didn't work out. But I might try that as the replacement.
But my little thing that I forgot was the vanilla extract or vanilla essence, depending on what you use. It's like a vanilla milkshake. It hugs you. But it also helps. I know dairy is a big issue, and there is butter in there, which is obviously a little bit of dairy, but it's just so much better than a coffee with cream. And I used to have Swiss water decaf, and it's a game changer. And I used to drink it and I forgot about it. And then when I dumped the coffee, I thought, well, actually, I do really miss it. I miss that sort of hot drink that's tasty. And it is, yes, it's like, as Yomi's saying, it is like a vanilla milkshake, but it's a warm one, which might sound horrible, but it is fantastic. It is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it looks good. And it means like it's nighttime for me here. So it means I would be able to have something like that. Whereas I can't have a coffee now because the coffee will keep me awake, you know?
Yes.
You can still have the hot drink at night.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing. If you cut the dairy out and you do miss coffee, like I say, it's really easy to do. You just boil up 100 milliliters of water and you put all the other ingredients, in a tube, and then you put your whizzer in and you put the hot water in as you go. And you can literally make it in 5 minutes, less than that, really. 35 milligrams of butter is, so it's a big chunk of butter, but it's great.
Papa Carnivore is saying, I love my 1 cup of patented fatty coffee deluxe with lots of butter, some bacon grease, a splash of cream, and some vanilla. Whip it up. Yum. Sounds good.
Yeah, it's really good. Can't stop drinking it.
Guys, if you have any questions or anything you'd like us to discuss, please put a Q in front of it. And we'll run through those as well. But speaking of the fat, are you eating kind of a really, really high fat carnivore diet, or is it 50-50?
Yeah, 50-50 by weight. I just eat the food. So ribeye is 50-50 by weight, an egg is 50-50 by weight, a lamb chop is 50-50 by weight. There's a little bit of a hint in nature there, what we should be aiming for.
Right.
I mean, some people, I mean, higher fat works for some people, I think, initially, because they've been so either, when they say calorie restricted, it's food restricted, or in a calorie deficit, which is a nutrient deficit. Yeah. And a sprinkle of salt, don't forget, Yummy. Just a little bit of salt as well. I use this. This isn't, I don't have a commission on this, but I use this Real Food Company salt, unrefined Celtic or Celtic sea salt. So, yeah.
Nice.
The fat thing, if people come to this way of eating and they've been low fat, then the higher fat seems to work. But I think that's just a sort of fat deficit, that they're rebuilding their fat intake and their energy intake. And many people say about thyroid, for instance, that you need that for thyroid. No, you don't actually. I mean, thyroid hormone is all proteins, really, but you do need a lot of energy to produce the thyroid hormone. So this is why people with thyroid issues sometimes do well on higher fat diets, is because they've been not giving their body enough energy to actually make the thyroid hormone in the first place. Because if you look at what the building blocks of thyroid hormone are, it's thyroglobulin. That's a massive protein. TPO, which is thyroid peroxidase, that's a protein that does deals with the hydrogen peroxide from a protein that's been put into sort of like the follicular cell. And then you've got tyrosine, which is amino acids. And of course, thyroid hormone is the only hormone in the body that uses a trace element in its construction. So iodine actually comes from the Earth's crust, and obviously then the animals eat it. So that's how we get it from food. It's a completely different hormone to all others, T3 and T4. But there's no fat involved in any of that. If people noticed, it's all proteins. But you need the energy to be able to do those processes. And that's where the fat comes in. Even like the changing of the iodines, the iodinases, they're all proteins, which incidentally, that's why you need selenium, because they need selenium. So the whole thing all makes sense. But anyway, long way of saying, I don't really think high fat is good long term. You don't need it long term. I think we need to get back to, once you've healed, then just eating by weight, 1-to-1, not by calories. Yes, by weight.
Oh yeah. So start that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, everyone's talking about their hot drinks. Hang on.
I know. I shouldn't have
Papa Carnivores. I do high fat carnivore, 70 to 80% fat. I need the high fat to prevent hard stools, and it keeps my bipolar, depression, anxiety, and ADHD in remission. I feel amazing. Yeah, the most fat someone's ever told me they eat is I interviewed a guy about a year ago. 90 to 95% fat. Yeah, because and actually, I think from memory, it's also for the things like depression and anxiety and things like that. So it's to keep him keep his mental health motoring along.
Yeah, I'm not anti-fat, by the way. Yeah, I mean, that's great. And yes, for constipation, if you feel like you're constipated, higher fat helps, definitely. And of course, like you say, with mental health, the neurotransmitters, the myelin sheaths, all your steroid hormones, testosterone, progesterone, anything that's got "one" on the end, that is the precursor of that is obviously cholesterol. So yeah, all of those things help.
Speaking about constipation, and this is not going to be a dirty story. Speaking about constipation, the longer you're on carnivore and the longer you are in the carnivore community, hearing a doctor say you cure constipation with fiber sounds more and more ridiculous every day.
Yes.
It's just
not a cure.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just like this tunnel is blocked. Okay, we'll put some more rocks in it. It's just crazy.
Yes. Yeah, it's it's indigestible, and yes, you will poop more, but that's because you're eating stuff that you can't digest. But it's not going to fix it. It's not going to fix it.
So we've got a question here. Is OMAD sustainable over the long term? My 3.5 years says yes. What do you think, Stephen?
Oh, right. Okay. I was letting you answer because last time you said, I didn't say much. I thought I'll shut up and let you say more.
No, sorry. I was trying to be concise for a change.
Yeah. Yes, it is for some people. I mean, this is the thing. At the moment, I'm quite fed up with seeing influencers with this one size fits all. And it doesn't. Yes, it's sustainable until it isn't for some people. Right. But you are proof that it is sustainable. Whereas some people might find they can't get enough protein in one sitting, or socially it doesn't work because they want to eat at 1 o'clock and then eat at 5 o'clock with their family. So it isn't just about what is optimal. It's, as in nutritional inputs and treating yourself like a science experiment. It's also what's good for your mind and your social experience. As that Papa Carnivore said, he has higher fat because it fixes these things for him. In the long term, if you are always feeling optimal, then it's working. If you start feeling, I'm going downhill, or my muscle mass is not where it should be, or I'm not sleeping so well, then maybe you need to eat twice a day. In my experience, I think females tend to do better with 2 meals a day rather than one. I think their appetite is just differently wired. And if you're a volume eater, you still might not be getting enough protein, or you might not be getting enough fat. So the best way to fix that is to do 2 meals a day. The great thing about OMAD, of course, is you're fasting for 23 hours. So your migratory motor complex is working all the time. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It's something I think we should talk about sometimes, which is it's just like a cleanup system for your digestive tract, especially in the ileum and the small intestine. So yeah, it ticks so many good boxes, doesn't it? You get autophagy in there because there's low level of incoming nutrients, as long as you can get enough food. But I'm very much a balanced sort of person, not as in, eat the rainbow. What I mean is, you've got to look at what works for you. And if you try OMAD, and I love OMAD, I also love food. And I find if you was to do anything, make sure that you always leave at least 4 hours to go back to the MMC, the migratory motor complex. Always leave at least 4 hours between ingesting anything. So you have your meal, and if you do go to 2 meals a day, make sure you don't snack or eat anything else until a complete clear 4 hours, and you will get that clean up system working for you. We get it at night because obviously we're not eating, so people get it probably a couple of times a day, but that's really good. The body is remarkable. This isn't all pie in the sky. I've actually seen images where they placed dye into foods and traced it, and you can actually see the MMC complex, the protein coming in and increasing the peristalsis and actually making things work better in the stomach. It's not all pie in the sky. So I think OMAD is great for many people, but if you are coming from, like I say, where you've been calorie deficit, which is a ridiculous phrase in its own right. So nutrient deficit, which is also micronutrient deficits, an electrolyte deficit, it's ridiculous. You might need to stock up with a bit of incoming food and go to 2 meals a day, or even 3 meals a day, just to get the leptin working and reset your satiety signals and your hunger signals. But yes, sustainable, as you are proof of, Dave, absolutely sustainable. If you're eating enough and you feel great.
The only thing I would say is, for anyone who is starting carnivore, don't try and start with OMAD. I would just go into it eating the way you normally do, and let the, whether you get to 2MAD or OMAD or whatever, naturally. Because going into carnivore, starting carnivore and thinking, okay, I'm going to do 1 meal a day, or I'm going to fast every second day or whatever, that you're taking on too much, and it's just I think a bit stressful mentally as well as probably physically. Yomi, thank you very much for the super chat. Very kind of you. Cordelia in Albany. I started on desiccated thyroid medication 2 months ago. Will this ultimately help me to drop fat off my body? What else can I do to support my thyroid? Doc, iodine won't help.
Doc, iodine won't help. Okay. I'm not sure what that last little bit means. So desiccated thyroid medication normally comes from pigs. Because what you're doing is you're grinding up the thyroid of pigs and desiccating it. So why do I mention that? Well, because the ratio of T4 to T3 is very different to humans' ratio of T4 to T3. I can't off the top of my head exactly remember the right ratio, but we make a lot more T4 than we do T3. In pigs, it's 1 to 4. So when you're taking that, you're having a lot more T4 than T3, but you're also getting all the other things like TPO and TG. It's remarkable. It is identical as a molecule, really. So it can be helpful. Will that help you drop fat off? As long as everything else is in place. If you are absolutely convinced it's only thyroid that is the problem, I'd like to see your numbers. I mean, this is hopefully informational and educational. There's no doctor-patient relationship, so I can't really tell you too much. I can give you the facts. If you're in America, I would also consider supplementing with T2, which works on the electron transport chain and really does ramp up your metabolic rate. It works on the cytochrome section of the electron transport chain. So I think if you it's a good option. I'm not saying it's a bad option, by the way. I'm just, there are downsides to these things as well as upsides. You are getting more T3 and you are producing more T4. Be interested to see more really. Are you producing a lot of reverse T3? Are you drinking tea, for instance, because tea has fluoride in, and that seems to disrupt the production of thyroid hormone? Because where you've got the thyroid globulin, which is like a huge string of protein, and you've got iodine, you've got tyrosine amino acids, and then you've got iodine popped onto there. So 4 iodines or 3 iodines or 3 iodines in the wrong configuration, which is reverse T3 or 2. Fluoride allegedly can actually take one of those spots. The jury's out on that, but I think that's possible. I do think it's possible. And from personal experience, only 4 weeks ago, my wife stopped having tea after many, many years. She's pretty lean anyway, but she had like 5 pounds to lose. And she took tea out, which did have a splash of milk in. And that 5 pounds just melted away. And she's got more energy than she's had in her lifetime. And she's 56 now. So all these little tweaks can really help. So I would look at other things first if you're having an energy problem, which is what most people worry about, or unexplained weight gain or weight loss or heat problems, either too cold, too hot. It's a bit like Goldilocks, isn't it? But yeah, I think if you just started on that 2 months ago, will it ultimately help to drop my fat off my body? Well, yes, it potentially, but obviously you've got to look at other things like dairy. Are you having dairy? That might be the thing. That's what I just said about the milk. Even in my fatty latte, that butter is dairy. I think that's problematic for some people. I think personally, it really, I love this job and I love getting to the bottom of everything. That's a person I'd love to have a consult with, because if you're struggling, I'd like to know. And then there's different types of iodine. You can get the iodine drops, or you can get the Iodoral, which is a tablet, and you get molecular iodine in that. And some people do better with that rather than the drops. So there's a lot of nuance to it. But the thyroid is essentially very simple to understand. But we haven't got all day to go into how it works. But yes, in answer to your question, yes, potentially it will ramp up the metabolic rate if you have enough T3, because that's what it does. These futile metabolic processes, which is pretty much unique to thyroid function. What it does is it ramps up your metabolic rate, and it also breaks stuff down. It's anabolic and catabolic. So, but it sort of ramps it all up, but it evens out. And those people that recently been saying my T3 has tanked, don't forget T3 will be lower on carnivore. Fact. That's just a fact, because more T3 to metabolize carbohydrates, because T3 is needed to pyruvate across the mitochondrial membrane in the glycolysis process. So we need much less. We need much less T3. So if you're doing it because of labs, that's the other thing. It should all be about clinical presentation. Most labs will give you an algorithmic answer. It's not a clinical judgment. So if it says it's low, that's not a clinical judgment. That is an algorithm based on sort of means and averages and statistics, but not actually clinical presentation, which is really frustrating.
Thank you very much, Cordelia. We've got a question from John Collins. Even if you get rid of visceral fat, you're still going to have an ugly, floppy belly unless you rebuild your stomach muscles. Well, I can speak to that. I've got an ugly, floppy belly if I do push-ups. You know, I thought, oh, this is nice and flat and hard now that I'm doing carnivore, and then I went down to do push-ups and realized that my skin still hangs down a bit. Can you get rid of that just by rebuilding your stomach muscles?
Well, you're talking to me now. Sorry, I was listening to you. I didn't know if it's
sorry.
Because it's a rhetorical question there. They put no question mark. Right. If you get rid of your visceral fat, are you still going to have an ugly, floppy belly? Well, visceral fat is fat around the organs, which can give you that bloated look. So, firstly, you are going to see that you will be trimmer. That's the first thing, and metabolically more healthy. If you have no subcutaneous fat, but it's all visceral fat and that goes, you'll probably have loose skin, possibly. That may happen. Stretch marks, possibly. Your stomach muscles, a little bit of exercise will tighten the area, but you can't spot reduce fat. So it's not going to change the amount of fat in that area, but it might change the appearance of that fat, or your appearance when you're looking at yourself in the mirror. But some people end up with like the loose skin, and that can be unsightly in their mind. Laura Spaff, who was a great influencer, she was very honest, and she ended up having surgery for the loose skin. Whereas other people have seen extended fasting over many years has reduced the loose skin. I think they've done that with proper fasting over a long period of time, therapeutic fasting, and seen that the autophagy has worked and it's tightened up those areas. But you still maybe have the stretch marks. I had a terribly botched appendix operation. So, the area around there that you're talking about, the side where my appendix is, I can see sort of dents and dimples where below the scar, there's zero fat, but above the scar, there is sort of fat lumps, which is very difficult to get rid of unless I absolutely get into very extended fasting. So I think the body does want to keep a certain level of fat around that area. But I think the question really is asking, if you rebuild the stomach muscles, will that help? Yes, that will help with the appearance. I think just over time, extended fasting, you will see an improvement in that area.
I think as well, if you do rebuild the stomach muscles, one thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a better posture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And having a better posture is going to, make it not as evident that you've got that loose skin as well, I think. Because as you stand more straight, it'll kind of tighten around your waist. Thank you for the question, John. Question here from Pokuokra. Thanks, guys, for this live. I asked a question about high blood pressure a few weeks ago in your live. I'm mostly ketovore, and I find that when I go strict carnivore, my numbers go up somewhat.
Right. Well, I'd like to know what the numbers somewhat are. That's quite vague, actually. Right. If you're drinking a lot of water, see, if I drink this all down now, right, which is nearly an excuse to have a bit more because it's sitting there calling my name, it will put my blood pressure up. So it could be a fluid balance thing. It could be that you're having a lot more salt. Could be that you're drinking too much. If your urine's clear, that will put your blood pressure up because that's indicating that your fluid balance is out and you're drinking too much. Overhydration will definitely put your blood pressure up. When you go carnivore, most people do salt their meals more, which is going to necessarily, if you are drinking lots of water, it's going to just make you bloat, and then you're going to urinate a lot. But in the meantime, it does depend when you take your blood pressure measurement as well. Are you doing it first thing, before you eat, after you eat, after you just had some fluid? So sorry to be really vague.
Here's a follow-up. What could be I'm really hoping to bring my blood pressure down. Last night's reading was 127/90, pulse 80.
Yeah, well, that's pretty low, isn't it? That's great. Don't know how old he is. Don't forget, age-related blood pressure is actually more important than insurance premium-led blood pressure readings. 120/80 is nothing to do with clinical experience or clinical presentation. It is a arbitrary number set by insurance companies, and there is a group that meets every 4 years to review the guidelines. And when they went under 120/80, which is just indicative of a 21-year-old athletic male, by the way, they went to 115/75. That was 8 years ago. They had to retract that 4 years later because so many people were feeling dizzy and, having fractures because they were falling down and stuff because it's way too low. So they brought it back up to 120/80. When I started in this, only 16 years ago, 46, right. So, I mean, by a rule of thumb, I would only start worrying if your blood pressure went over 146/106. So I think our blood pressure is pretty good, but people buy into this medication-led number. It's dynamic. Our arteries stiffen over time. That's what happens. Sadly, we cannot actually reverse that trend. You can slow it down, slow down the progression. So there are scales out there that measure things called pulse wave velocity, where it looks at the artery and how elastic it is. The more elastic it is, the lower your blood pressure will be. But as you age, it gets stiffer. A lot of that is to do with things like glycation from glucose. That's part of the problem, because they form these irreversible bonds and deranged proteins, and that's what ages you. That's why they're called advanced glycation end products, which is a neat acronym of age. Glycation is glucose bonding to proteins. So your blood pressure needs to be adaptable. If you look at a giraffe with a long neck and a giraffe with a short neck, they will have completely different blood pressures, because the one with the long neck needs more blood pressure to get the required blood, nutrients, oxygen, iron to the brain. Well, that makes total sense. So blood pressure is completely unique based on your temperature, your height, your age, your activity levels, and your inputs. So if you are drinking too much and you have completely diluted urine, no straw color, no waste, then your blood pressure will be a bit high. Simple as that. So you need to look at the fluid balance. And that, if people think, well, that's a bit simplistic, that is what the body does. The renin, aldosterone, angiotensin system, which is basically the thing that regulates your blood pressure naturally. And people have heard of angiotensin and, ACE inhibitors, which is angiotensin converting enzymes. What the body does is it looks at your fluid balance and your electrolyte balance. And if in the arteries there are things called baroreceptors which measure pressure. And how is pressure measured? See, it's all simple when you break it down and understand it. The vessels in your body here, in your artery, let's say that's the vessels and the blood's popping through here. If it's going through a high pressure, it will stretch those vessels, and there's baroreceptors that go, whoa, that's quite high. That signals back to the kidneys, which is the renal area, isn't it? Which is what renin is. Renal, and in always means it's a protein. So renin is released, which hooks up with aldosterone in the adrenals, and then you've got angiotensin being released by the liver. It goes to the lungs, basically, and what does it do? It either retains water or it expels water, but it also retains sodium and expels potassium and hydrogen a little bit. So the body is just working with your electrolytes and water. So why don't you help it? Don't overhydrate. Make sure you've got enough electrolytes. And to quote Bart Kay, job's a good one. It's so simple, isn't it? So personally, if my blood pressure was 127/90 with a pulse of 80, I would think, oh, right, that's pretty good. You could find that your pulse will lower and your blood pressure goes up, but the overall volume of the blood is the same. So your body wants the blood delivery to be a certain thing. That's it. So you might be very active.
DJ Magic Man, by the way, Dave, this is Homeless Santa from your interview with Tony, Random Adventures 2.0. Homeless Santa, we finally meet, although it's virtual. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Okay. And we've got a super chat here from Nicholas. Thank you very much, Nicholas. A wonderful live Q&A, the greatest champion of the real life human dimension of carnivore, hosting my favorite health and nutrition science teacher. Oh, that's very kind of you, Nicholas. Thank you very much. Okay, and question here from Steadfast. Carnivore 21 months, keto prior, fasting insulin increased 4.8 to 10, subclinical hypothyroid, toxic nodule. Could that or methimazole skew the insulin? Feel great.
Well, you feel great. I think is this the lady that asked about the desiccated thyroid? I think that
maybe. Sorry, I've unstarted. No, different lady.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah.
What's the question?
I'm not sure what methimazole is.
Right. Okay.
What's methimazole?
Well, it's a medication that she's taking, but I think the question might be that she's got a. Let's have a look. It's definitely not the same person. Fasting insulin, 4.8 to 10. Right. Okay. Oh, could that actually? Right. Okay. I've got it. I think because they've shortened it. So what methimazole does is it actually inhibits thyroid peroxidase, and so that blocks the iodinization. So it's reducing thyroid function. That's what it's doing. It won't really affect your insulin in that way. I'm just trying to think it through with speculation, because you're obviously producing too much thyroid hormone. Let's go through this. Let's think about this live. So you think you've been told that your body is producing too much thyroid. So they've given you a medication that interferes with thyroid peroxidase, which means that you can't iodinize thyroid hormone. So that will bring that down. Now, if your insulin is gone up, that's probably for some other reason, because well, I'll tell you what it is then. Here we go, because we're talking about metabolic processes. Okay, so if you're hyperthyroid, remember that's actually allegedly catabolic. And the next bit doesn't make sense because it's also increasing gluconeogenesis. So that's what the thyroid does. Remember, T3 does increase gluconeogenesis. It does also break down glucose. So glycogenolysis happens, so your glycogen gets cut down as well. So this is where we're talking about the futile processes. What could be happening there is that the gluconeogenesis is then sparking an insulin reaction.
That's just a follow-up. TSH suppressed. Which doc wants up? T3, T4 normal?
Yeah, you see, this is where it's interesting, isn't it? So what's happening is the feedback to the hypothalamus, which is the master regulator. So you've got the hypothalamus at the base of the brain, and then you've got the pituitary gland, which is sort of like the workhorse, and then you've got the thyroid, which is just picking up signals. So TSH is coming from the pituitary gland, which is a part of the hypothalamus, but the lower appendage, so to speak. And it's saying, right, it seems like there's great levels of thyroid coming back, so we don't need to stimulate you so much, which is why it's being, I hate the word suppressed. It's, if your T3 and T4 are normal, then why do you need to worry about TSH? The only point of worrying about TSH is if you want to come off the medications and you want to get the whole thing to be balanced naturally. But if you're medicating, TSH isn't suppressed. It just doesn't need to do anything, because it's going, well, thank you very much. Look at this. The body's great. Look at the feedback. So we don't need to nudge the thyroid so much. And if your T3 is normal, yes, it's absolutely working the gluconeogenic pathway. So I would think that would be the explanation for the insulin going up. That makes sense?
Thank you for your question, Steadfast.
Did it make sense, Dave, or did I lose you? Sorry.
Sort of. Stuff about the thyroid, I'm still a bit hazy on. So yeah, I
Well,
need
look,
to do a bit of research myself on that. Yeah.
Well, it's simple, mate. Let's do it. Let's do it now.
Okay.
Right. So
Cool.
you've got a hypothalamus, hypothalamus. The thalamus is above it. It's the base of your brain, and that's getting signals, right? So the signal will be how much T3 is in there, how much T4 is in your system, right? T3 is the active form, T4 is storage. Right, really simple. We also have T2 that people don't talk about. The reason they didn't talk about it is you can't really detect it in blood in standard labs, but you can in a research setting. All right, so I'll throw that in there. So most people focus on T4, the storage form, T3, the active form. So the thyroid makes about 90% T4 and 10% T3. Then it goes out to the tissues, and then it becomes active by taking an iodine off. Simple as that. You take an iodine off, it becomes T3 and it's active. It goes into the cell via a thing called a monocarboxylate transporter, which people don't talk about, MCTs, but not MCTs like we always think of, MCT8 for those that are geeky. It goes into the cell, T3, via this monocarboxylate transporter, and then it goes to the nucleus of the cell. I promise this is really easy. You can not believe how easy it is. Goes into the cell, goes to the DNA. There's a transcription factor. It's actually called a thyroid hormone element. It's called an element, basically. So it's designed, and then that tells the genes to make proteins. This is what T3 does. And it makes sodium, potassium pumps for the outside of the cell.
Right.
And the more of those, the more ATP you need. And that is literally how it makes your metabolic rate go up.
Oh.
That's it. So the more T3 you get, so when you've got hypothyroid, you've got loads of T3 flooding in, it's making loads of sodium and potassium pumps, loads and loads of ATP, and you've got hypothyroid. That's it. And that signal goes back to that lady, and it's like, whoa. We don't need so much TSH.
Right.
Okay. That's it. Because there's loads going on. And then that would lower the T3 to a natural level, and then you wouldn't be hypothyroid. So once you've got a nodule, you see that's knocked out because that's a physical, that's, a traumatic event to the gland, an actual thing that's happened. So it's a little bit dysregulated. So what they're trying to do is stop the production at the thyroid level in what's called follicular cells. There's a colloid where there's a protein called TPO. There's another one called thyroglobulin, and there's little amino acids called tyrosine on there. And what they're doing is they're stopping that bit, the TPO, thyroid peroxidase, with that drug. They're stopping that working so much. So that stops the production. That's it. Simple.
Right. Okay. Does that have like side effects if they just stop that working?
Yes. Because what's happening is you are reducing the thyroid hormone. Yeah, absolutely. But you're not really fixing the issue, but you can't in this case. So you're managing it. So it's fine, but we would, I'd like to try and dial back. I mean, that's a person I'd love to have a consult with because, I'm a great believer in we try and get as natural as possible. But the question was about the insulin, wasn't it? Why it went up. So what does T3 do? So it ramps up the metabolic rate. You need more ATP. Well, if you need more ATP, you need more blood glucose for the energy. So it ramps up gluconeogenesis.
So your insulin goes up.
Yeah, because therefore you've got more blood glucose, which is fine because you're trying to provide energy to make ATP via the Krebs cycle, which is totally normal. And insulin will react to that, and you'll get more insulin. Right. So the whole thing. So what you've sort of done is pushed. It's not even a problem, to be honest. You push the issue somewhere else because there's always a knock-on effect for anything you do. None of this is bad, by the way. If the person's listening still and thinks, "Oh, this sounds awful," no, it's a mechanism that it's a workaround which works. It does work, but you need to understand that because your metabolic rate is being pushed up. That's what hypothyroid is, and how it does it. It's also breaking down stuff at the other side, and it should be it should level out. That's the thing. But what's happened is it's just gone up a bit. It's gone up a notch because we've got this nodule, so it's not being regulated properly.
Right. Okay.
I
Thank
hope that
you.
made sense.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that made a lot more sense. Well, look who's here. Rick, thanks for joining
Yay.
us. Really appreciate
Three
it.
meals a day, I think Rick does.
3 meals a day, that's right.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's iguana.
Does he eat iguana? Is that real, by the way? Does he really do that? Yeah.
From his garden.
All right.
I believe. Yeah. Yeah. Have you had iguana recently, Rick, or is it not iguana season anymore? Iguana power. Nice. I've got to get to Florida one day and have an iguana with you. I'd love to try it. I don't think it'd be something I'd like, but I'd love to give it a try. It's kind of like I'd want to try snake as well, but I'm not sure that I'd really enjoy it. Yes, from Homeless Santa. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up and tag a friend in the comments that needs to know more about what's being discussed. Thank you very much for the reminder. Yes, whose ever channel you're on, please smash that like button. I made a video a couple of weeks ago catching an iguana. Oh, I'll have to check that out. Awesome. Okay, have we got any more questions here? If I missed any, no, I don't think so.
I must have bored everyone to sleep.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, everyone.
I think on a Friday, everyone's kind of looking forward to the weekend or something. So maybe they've got less questions because of that. Yeah. Oh,
It's
nice.
complicated. It's complicated with hypothyroid because, you know, if you're taking a supplement, that puts it up. Obviously, if it's hypothyroid, the supplement puts it up. And that lady there was trying to reduce the thyroid, or the medication is trying to reduce the production of thyroid hormone, but we don't know what's happening in the tissues. You see, and if you're still producing T4 and converted to T3, you will still get an increase in gluconeogenesis. So that's the thing. That's the only speculation I can have, is that it is working at the peripheral tissues and the conversion is still happening. But anyway, I could be wrong. This is where historical data really helps, because we need to know what was happening in the past when her insulin was 4.6, I think, off the top of my head.
Right.
And then why did it go to 10? So we need to know what was happening in the past, how much T3 was there in the past. See, normal is just you know, a glib thing. So what was the actual readings? Did the hypothyroidism, did it reduce and then go back up a bit? You know, there's so many different things I'd need to know, to be honest.
And this is the thing that makes the doctors look a little bit silly, I think, when they just focus in and target one number when they do your blood work. It's that you can see when they focus in on a number, you know, typically it's something like LDL, but when they just focus in on that number, they're not thinking about anything outside of that. They're not thinking about why it may have suddenly jumped up or suddenly gone down or whatever it happens to be. They're not thinking about any context. They're just going, that number bad, must do something, must write prescription. Yeah.
But I see that, you know, that's the thing, because if your T4 and T3 is normal, and I've done this with somebody, we had 4 years of data, you see, and he was constantly told your TSH is subclinical, because doctors are told, oh, TSH got to be this, focusing on, as you say, on one number. And I just did a thought experiment with him and said, well, let's have a look. 4 years you've been keeping records. 4 years you felt fine. 4 years your T4's normal, you know, in inverted commas always, and T3 is normal. So you've not got subclinical TSH. You've got perfect TSH for you. Because what is its job? Its job is to tell the thyroid to produce the right level of T4 and T3 that your body requires. It's not subclinical. It's just not in the numbers that they want it to be. That's it. And this is the problem. If that lady has got normal T3 and T4, why are they trying to manipulate the TSH? Why say it's suppressed? It's not suppressed. It's appropriate.
Yeah, appropriate doesn't write prescriptions, though.
No, and it's frustrating, isn't
it? Elizabeth, thank you very much for the super chat. And question for Stephen. From Anna. I keep hearing too much protein turns to sugar in our blood, but also that we need more protein as we age. Confusing. I'm 52, having about 125 grams a day. Could you clarify, please?
Yeah. Okay. So there's been 2 really good experiments about protein ingestion using doubly labeled amino acids. So when you first eat protein, that amino acid has been followed. The first experiment was absolutely categoric. That wasn't doubly labeled. That was just using blood glucose readings, where the scientists assumed that 50% of protein would definitely turn to glucose. So they took a baseline reading of ingesting 56 grams of glucose into somebody and looking at the blood, or letting them eat basically, 56 grams of pure glucose, and they looked at their blood glucose levels. And then they assumed, right, so if we put 56 grams of glucose into that person by ingestion, and half of protein turns into blood glucose, if we give them double that in protein, we'll see exactly the same blood glucose profile. And that didn't happen at all. It was flat as a pancake. The protein did not do that at all. And then I think it might have been Japanese scientists. They wanted to take it a little bit further. It might have been French. Anyway, they did what's called doubly labeled. So they marked the amino acids with a fluorescent system so they could track it. And then they did what's called a flux test, where they looked at the blood glucose and they followed the amino acids. And lo and behold, these amino acids, it was from eggs, by the way, proper whole food, did not raise the blood glucose anywhere near as much as they expected. About 2% of those amino acids ended up in the blood glucose. So what actually does happen, when you do a lot of nuanced research, and don't forget, I did 10 years in a private blood testing, and I've been in labs and spoken to medical engineers and experts and looked at machinery. When you eat protein, it needs 5 times the amount of energy than carbs or fats to be digested. Now, that is detected in the body. And cholecystokinin, CCK, will go to the pancreas and say to the pancreas, wow, have you seen what's happening? We're eating lots of protein. And we're going to need a lot more energy, guys. What actually happens when you first eat protein, if you've got the right calibration, the proper machinery, you will see your blood glucose actually goes down initially, and then it goes up. And that's because CCK goes to the pancreas, talks to the alpha cells, says, right, we need some glucagon, because glucagon will put your blood sugar up and it will produce more energy to be able to digest the protein. So this is where this myth-ish comes from, because what you see in your blood glucose monitor is a rise in blood glucose, a little bit when you eat protein, but it is no way that protein doing that. It's the mechanistic way that your body is now demanding more energy to digest the protein. Absolutely not controversial, all known. All those mechanisms are absolutely known. Absolutely known. So that's what's putting your blood glucose up. Now, later on in your life, you might have gluconeogenesis happening. And what is that? Gluconeogenesis is the making of new glucose from non-carbohydrate substrates. What are these? Well, that can be lactate, that can be glycerol. That's the main one, by the way, which is the backbone of a triglyceride. Or it can be some amino acids. So, yeah, protein can, in a very circuitous way, be contributing to your gluconeogenesis, but not in the way people think. Steak does not become cake, and it's all completely regulated and all so typically obvious to understand when someone just breaks it down and says, well, that's what happens.
So I might have missed as part of that explanation, but when you think of gluconeogenesis, is it substrate driven or demand driven or both?
Oh, it's really demand driven, but you've got to have the substrate to do it. Yeah.
Right.
The body is so smart. If it needs more energy and it can do, if it can make new glucose from glycerin, it's very unusual to think of amino acids being in short supply on carnivore. So it would be demand driven, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, because that was always my understanding, but then you hear the odd person here, there, and everywhere, often carnivore skeptics, saying, well, if you eat all that protein, it's just going to drive gluconeogenesis and, you're going to be back in the same position you were when you're eating sugar. But if it's demand driven, then that's not going to happen, right?
That's right. Yeah. Because the thing is, the body is always looking for proteins. And it's always going through phases of autophagy and breaking down proteins to replace with new ones. Don't forget, it's getting rid of the glycated proteins. So that, that's a moot point, really, because you're not glycating, so the turnover is probably less. But you'll be making more structures. Protein, the body, if you take the water out, it's only 1% carbohydrate. The rest is protein and fats, and you need a lot of protein. So most people are under eating protein. It'd be very difficult to overeat protein. And there are studies where, this 30 grams of protein, at one time, that's completely debunked. There are studies there where people are eating 100 grams of protein, and it's all being utilized and used for structures in the body. It's not being wasted. It's not turning to glucose. It's being used. And I think that study actually said there seems to be no limit to the amount of protein we could ingest, or no physiological limit, no actual reason. I suppose satiety would stop you, but you do need the associated fat, though, of course. So eating whole foods works because you need the fats, because you need the bile to be able to actually assimilate the amino acids in protein. You need bile. Many people think bile just works on fat, which is its predominant role, but also it helps with the synthesis of proteins and amino acids.
Right.
That answer your question, Dave? Sorry, am I losing you today?
Thank you very much. So I was just looking at the questions come in. Okay. Stephen Manalo, I'm curious, do you think the normal ranges for markers like vitamin D, calcium, etc., would shift if someone is a long-term carnivore diet?
Well, it does, but not on those particular things. The biochemistry, when you're looking at electrolytes, I think for most people, they're about where they should be. I think that might be one of the few things where the ranges are apt. And that's because it's so tightly regulated. Vitamin D, possibly, but I think if we look at other normal ranges, there's definitely discrepancies where long-term carnivore, it's going to be completely different. So that would be things like, T3 is a great example, by the way. That would be much lower, and physiologically an indication of adaptation. Much lower insulin, I think that is pretty much nailed on. Fasting glucose would probably be higher, I think, because we're fat adapted. So where does the glucose reside? It tends to reside in the bloodstream because the cell is replete with fatty acids. So I would think fasting glucose may, over a long time, actually go up a little bit. Your average blood glucose levels probably shifts more towards sort of 105 milligrams per deciliter, which makes sense because the body probably wants that. On an average, if you're eating loads of carbohydrates, the reason it tends to go down to sort of 80 for some people who are metabolically fit is because they know that the body knows there's incoming carbs and it's going to push that level up, and it doesn't want to get anywhere near 127 milligrams per deciliter because we know that's when the polyol pathway kicks in. But when you're on carnivore, we don't get into that level. And you certainly don't want to get into 180 milligrams per deciliter because that's a renal threshold where it can't really cope with any more glucose and it puts it into the urine. So there's all these physiological limits, but on carnivore, it's going to be different because we are physiologically different because of our inputs. So yeah, I think they would be different. Iron would be different. Requirement for vitamin C would be much lower because we have heme iron going directly into the system. Whereas if you have non-heme iron, or the iron from plants, you need a load of vitamin C because there's a thing called vitamin C ferroreductase, which reduces the non-heme iron into heme iron. And the name vitamin C ferroreductase says it all. You need a lot of vitamin C to do that. So you need less vitamin C. That's pretty much nailed on as well. Your EGFR needs to be ignored in blood, the estimated glomerular filtration rate of the kidney, because that's based on dietary protein or creatinine, which is actually the muscle wastage part of the protein synthesis. Well, when you eat more protein, it tends to put that number up, which, because it's a formula, brings your EGFR down. So you need to actually probably dump that test and use cystatin C, which is not affected by dietary protein. That's another one, EGFR. I think, converting that to cystatin C would be better. I would definitely dump the A1C, unless this HbA1c comes in, adjusted, which adjusts for the lifespan of the red blood cells. The A1C is completely unreliable in this way of eating. You can do a fructosamine test. That's a better test. You can do glycated albumin. That might be a good test. Or the 1,5-AG test, which is also a good measure. So not only would I say the ranges are not appropriate, and sorry, I could go on, and I don't want to be too boring, but we could change a lot of the markers and also do more appropriate tests rather than the ones that are standard.
Thank you for your question, Stephen. Okay, we've got time for one more question, and that's from Lewis Mason. 3 months carnivore and feeling amazing. How do I convince my missus that she needs to start eating a proper human diet? She just rolls her eyes when I try to tell her she's slowly poisoning herself. I would, if it was me, and my wife rolls her eyes at me, so I can relate. I would just try and convince her to give it a try. Just say, trying it doesn't mean that you have to do it for the rest of your life. Give it a try for 30 days. Just give it 30 days and see how you feel. No commitment, nothing. If you try it for 5 days and you don't like it, you haven't lost anything. Just go back to eating your pasta and Cheetos or whatever. But I'm not saying that's what your wife's doing, but anyway, just give it a try. And you're not committing to anything. You just make a goal or try and stick to it for 30 days. What are your thoughts on that one, Stephen?
Well, firstly, how do you know when someone's a vegan? They tell you, right? So don't be that. All right. So I think the problem is when you start carnivore and you feel amazing, you want to tell everybody. So that can be quite tedious. The easiest thing to do is be the example. I've actually got a guy at the moment that's going through this very scenario where, he's in jeans that he hasn't been able to wear for 30 years. Hair's growing back. That his gums are getting better. His energy's better. Even his personal trainer has to admit, wow, this carnivore's really working for you. We did a side-by-side picture within, 3 months. You wouldn't even recognize him. He just looks much younger. His skin looks better and all that.
Different person.
You are going to be the example. So it is frustrating to watch people slowly poison themselves. And it is very frustrating when they tell you that all balance is it, or moderation's it, or fat's bad for you. And you think, well, look at
eat
me,
the rainbow.
eat the rainbow. Then you want to go, well, look at me, and I get the frustration. But sadly, you are fighting years and years of brainwashing. And I said that right. I mean, that's what you're fighting. And I up until age 50, I believed it all, honestly. Even though I lost my mum and dad who were, believed the food guidelines. My mum died of colon cancer, even though they kept giving her loads and loads of fibre. Some strange reason, it got worse and worse and she died. It's difficult to fight that. And don't forget, you've only been 3 months carnivore. So 4 months ago, You weren't carnivore. So it's difficult, all right? So you've got to be very empathetic with that person to understand that, hey, my eyes were blinkered to it at one point. I had a moment where I thought, well, I've got to change things up. They've got to get to that. They have got to get to that themselves, make their own decision. And I think just being carnivore, being consistent, just getting better and better and better. And at some point, your wife will come to you. She won't roll her eyes. She'll just roll up and say, hello, right, what are you doing? Why is that working? Now, but some people don't want that. Some people just don't want to change. They don't want to give up their bread and potatoes. And that's really difficult. That's disheartening. But I'm, bigger people than me, and Dr. Gary Fecky, I think, and Sean of Baker have both said that they've had people going for amputations and they're okay with the amputation rather than change their food. I don't understand that. Yeah. So some people are really wedded to the food. Some people just look at it as, I can't live without my bread and potatoes. I've actually had that said to me. So, just have to be patient. And I think she'll come round, because if you're feeling amazing and things are getting better, just bide your time, I think, and be the example.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep something else in mind as well. Like, once you go carnivore, you have this kind of perspective shift on eating, and it's not just the way you feel. It's like when you eat this way, everything's different, and you're not hungry anymore, and you're not trying to work or trying to do other things and constantly thinking about food and whatever, right? So it's a whole perspective shift. And you can't, it's hard to make non-carnivores understand that, because they've got to experience it. And
Yes.
someone explained to me today what it's like. It's like someone who's been blind all their life. Try and explain to them what blue is. Right? You can't. And it's almost the same with carnivore. You can't sit down and logically say to someone, this is what it's like when you're on carnivore, because they've got no reference point for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't feel a broken leg if you've never had a broken leg.
Right.
You can imagine it, but you'll never know what it feels like, which is a good thing, obviously. So it's very difficult to get your perception into somebody else's mind. I mean, to be honest, your version of blue, how do I know that what you think is blue is what I see as blue? You can't, can you? You can't categorically do that, so it's a tough thing to try and open someone's eyes and mind to it. And also you've got the government wouldn't hurt me, in here. The NHS wouldn't do anything to harm me.
Right. They've got my best interests at heart.
Yeah. Why would they lie? And you just think, well, because they make billions, if not trillions, out of you. And you've got to look at what happens when they make a little pronunciation about 2001, when they introduced the phrase, pre-diabetes. No such thing. Pre-diabetes is completely made up in the National Institute of Health cafeteria. And the director of the American Diabetes Association has since said he absolutely rused the day that they did that, because they did it for the wrong reasons, to scare doctors and patients into taking things a bit more seriously. But there is no such thing as pre-diabetes. So, So all of this stuff, it's all conspiring against us, but you'll get there. Just be the example, keep your powder dry, try not to ram it down their throat. And I can't say any more than that. Right? Just be the example. I think that's the best thing you can do.
Well, thank you very much for joining us and chatting with us and giving us some questions. Really appreciate your time tonight. Coach Stephen, thank you very much for coming on with me. And again, apologies for standing you up last night.
That's okay. I've been stood up before.
When you got in there, I'd already exited. So I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you guys. And we will see you on another live stream very soon.